Vanakkam. George Mallory's body was found on the 1st of May 1999. It was found very close to Mount Everest on the way in Himalayas. The interesting fact is that he died in 1924, which means that after 75 years of his death, his body was found. So, you may be wondering, how can a body be found out after 75 years of death? It didn't decompose or what? Yes, of course it didn't decompose, because of the weather conditions prevalent near Mount Everest. The body was just as it was. The mountain climber who found George Mallory's body, Kaana Alter, he found that it was George Mallory. That was the question that the entire mountaineering world was waiting for an answer for. Did George Mallory die on his way to Mount Everest, or did he die when he was returning? Why is this question so important? It's so important because if he died on his way to Mount Everest, it is just like any other death of a mountain climber. But if it is a death when he was coming back from Mount Everest, then it makes him the first ever human being to climb Mount Everest. Hillary and Tenzing did it much later in 1950s. So how did they find the answer? Was it on his way up or his way down? One set of people believe that it was on his way down. And how did they find it out? They found it because they examined George Mallory's body. Everything was intact because of the snow conditions, except one thing. He was carrying the photo of his wife, Ruth Turner, with him. He promised his wife that if he ever reached Mount Everest, he would place her photograph in the summit and come back. Since that photo was missing, one set of people believed that he did reach Mount Everest, but on his way back, either because of an avalanche or something else, he died. So this story was very inspiring for me because it was George Mallory's third attempt. He died in 1924, but before that he already made 2 attempts to climb Mount Everest. In those days the conditions were pretty tough. Oxygen cylinders were not really available, yet the spirit of adventure drove George Mallory to do this. Before his last and final attempt, the press asked him, "Why are you going there? Your chances of victory are minimal. Why are you trying to go to Mount Everest?" And George Mallory famously answered, "Because it is there." That is the spirit of adventures. That is the spirit of people who attempt to do adventures. Much later, when I read a Thirukkural, I am sure George Mallory might not have even heard about Thiruvalluvar, but when I read a Thirukkural, I was able to correlate these 2 big pieces. Why do people attempt to do things even when they know that the chances of success were only minimal? And Thiruvalluvar famously answered this, "Kaana Muyaleydha Ambinil, Yaanai Pizhaiththavael Endhal Inidhu." When there is a warrior who is attempting to kill an animal with the power of the arrow in his hand, he will never attempt to do it with a rabbit. He will always attempt to kill an elephant, because even if he fails, he knows that that is much more worth the effort than killing a rabbit. So when people plan for big adventures, big goals, I think the people who succeed or who may not succeed have only one thing in common. They want to attempt big and they want to be carried by the spirit of adventure. This is exactly the line that links the great George Mallory with our saint Thiruvalluvar. For more such thoughts on Thirukkural, follow Thirukkural with the Times with me, Bharathi Baskar, every Saturday in the Times of India.